could he who died as a criminal, the last word that came out, at least some of the last word that came out from his mouth was, my God, why have you forsaken me? Forsaken, cursed. How can there be followers? That is why I asked the 10th question. What happened after death? What happened after death? All the founders were succeeded by the next leader, except Jesus. He said, I'm still alive. Even though he died, he says he's still alive. And then we scrutinized that. We said, we're not going to just swallow. We're not going to dismiss. We're going to look at it very carefully. And we looked at it very carefully. And we looked at what other theories could be there. And then we looked at what evidences there are for such an epoch-making event. A man who said, I will rise again, and when they actually killed him and put him into the tomb, he rose again. There is evidence for any fair inquirer. That's what we saw. And so if you review all the 10 questions, makes it clear and compelling that the claims of Jesus in the Bible are absolutely unique and could very well be the only way. The next session described the 7 features of Jesus that clearly set him apart as completely unique. That's what we saw yesterday. The 7 features of the Bible are similarly incomparable and unique. So the combination of a unique man whose story is written in a unique book makes that combination truly unbeatable. But then there was one question, which we are going to address this evening. Why did the most innocent and blameless person die the most torturous and shameful death of all? Now that is a question, because when you look at it, who is responsible for this kind of injustice? Did cosmic ultimate justice go wrong and bad? In fact, that is a question not only among the general public, but in the Muslim mind. And if any of you here is a Muslim, you'll agree with me. How can Allah allow a person who is so good to die? Therefore, he never died, because Allah took him. In the 4th chapter of Quran, in the 157th verse, it says, he never died. How can a good man die? How can God allow them to die? So that's the question we will answer this evening. And that's the last discussion you will have with me. We've been doing it for eight evenings, and this will be the end. In this one, I would suggest that we don't use our mind so much. Don't hear me with your mind. All these 8 sessions, I asked you to hear me with your mind. Be logical and be, inquiring and grapple with the questions. For this last one, I'm asking you to listen with your heart, not just with your mind. Because I'm going to tell you a very short story. And that story, I hope, will answer this question. And it's a story that's written now in the Bible. Why do I quote now from the Bible? Because we already recognize that the Bible is unique. So now I'm free to quote from the Bible. I'm free now to talk about Jesus as a person whom people can follow, because it makes good sense. Like the late Benjamin Warfield said, we do not follow despite reason. We follow because it is the reasonable thing to do. So now we have settled that part, and so I will quote from the story in the Bible. So are we ready to do that? Okay, let's stretch out then and get to what I have called the supreme transaction, in which we will listen with our hearts. Before we go to that short story, there are some words that I'm going to use, and just to make the story flow, I'm going to give those words certain meanings so you know what is meant by those words when I use them. The first word is justice, being just, equal, balanced. In justice, you require 3 things. Number 1, the rule, the law. You also have to have a method by which if a person keeps to the law, he gets rewarded. And if a person breaks that law, he gets punished. That is justice. You have a law. If you keep it, good for you. If you don't, you're going to have a punishment. I call it the 3 R's. The rule, the reward, and the retribution. These are set. You cannot change. If you change any of these 3, it's no longer justice. But if you use only justice in any relationship, that relationship will slowly dwindle down. Nobody can just be only just for everything. Nobody here can really say that you were given reward for everything you did and you were punished for everything you did wrong. Something else came in that allows us to go on. And that thing is mercy. But mercy cannot change the law or the reward or the punishment. That'll be tampering with justice. Justice is satisfied once the axe falls. The only thing mercy can do is shift the axe here. Don't fall here. It has to fall. Justice as a cannon will fire. Mercy cannot stop the blast, but it can turn the cannon this way. That's all mercy can do. Because if mercy allows the punishment to be reduced even 1 iota, that would be changing the law. And if the law can be changed, we will have no need for mercy. All we will need is to change the law whenever we need. The change would then be completely arbitrary, and we would have neither justice nor mercy in their ultimate sense. Justice remains justice, and mercy retains its feature only if justice is inflexible and completely changeless. So that's the concept. Justice means rule cannot be changed, nor the reward can be changed, nor can the punishment be changed. Mercy will have to allow the axe to fall, but it can do one thing, it can shift the axe here or there. The second word is righteousness. Boy, that's a long word. And people wonder, how do you define that? The word righteousness has the word right in it. So it's just basically saying you're doing it right. You're doing it correctly. That's righteousness. But when we look at ourselves and how we live on actually 3 levels. The level of the actions, and the level of plans to do the actions. You can do a good action with a bad plan, or sometimes you'll have a good plan, a bad action. But then there's one more level. Behind the plan is a motive. It is the motive that really decides what is right or wrong. Because if the motive is okay, then even if you did something wrong, you are forgiven and accepted. And even if you did something just wonderful, but if your motive was bad, then that wonderful thing became wonderfully bad. Why? Because that motive is what decides. So how shall we decide whether a motive is good or bad? I'm making a very rock bottom definition of righteousness, and here it is. The principle of righteousness and goodness is you first, not me. It is the simplest definition. But remember, whenever something is simple, it can run the deepest. A complicated thing can get stuck here and there. God is righteous, but He also is love. So righteousness and love should come kind of close together, and they do. So what we're going to look at, the word love. We use only one word, love. And then it goes all over the place because we don't know what really we mean when we use the word love. But if you look at the Greek language and the Latin, they use different words. So let me just mention the words that they use. The Greek, one of the words it uses is eros, erotic love. That love requires and is usually a physical type of love. You are physically attracted, and it's best described in marriage, where a man and a woman are physically attracted. They have erotic love. There's another word called phileo, filial, family love. This is the love between family members. Now, physical attraction is not such a big thing. Now it is the question of support. Now it's the question of being together. The filial love is in the family. Then these two are Greek words, then we shift to Latin, sturge. Sturge is the love between friends. There it is not the question of physical attraction, not in the question of, hey, you're born from my mother, same thing, so we are good as a family. Now it is friendship. Friendship has one quality, which is loyalty. That is the highest form of that expression of love, sturge. Then there is caritas, again a Latin word, charity. The love that comes out when we feel somebody is in need. We help them out of charity, out of caritas. These four are what you and I commonly use in our day-to-day life. But there's one more word that the Greeks had. Very unusual, very few people ever used it, but it's called agape. Agape love, they felt was different from all the others because they described it as godly love. So what's the difference between agape and all these four? There is one fundamental difference. All these four require something to elicit it. Eros requires physical attraction. Phileo requires a family setting. Sturge requires friendship. And caritas requires a place where somebody is in need. Agape requires nothing. It loves because it loves. Eros, when the physical attraction is gone, can die. Phileo can also go away when you have a fight in the family. No more fighting, no more family, we'll fight. Filial love is gone. And when my friend kicks me in the face and knocks me off, then no more friendship, then sturge also is gone. And if this guy is not in need of my real help, then there's no caritas. These four require something to elicit love. But the agape love requires nothing. In other words, it is a reasonless love. Now listen very carefully to the next sentence. If it has no reason and it is there, present, then it can never find a reason to go. That is the love of God, a self-sacrificing love. It has no reason at all. It is a mysterious type of love which can love the unlovely, which can love your enemies, because there is no reason. Unrighteousness is the exact opposite. Me first, not you. Anything that comes out of that, no matter how nice it is unrighteousness. The next word is heaven. Now, the word heaven is in the Bible, so I'm quoting that. And you know, the word heaven is described in terms of gold. Golden streets and golden houses. Why would God write gold? Do you know why he did that? One of the reasons is because our sense of values is warped. If he didn't put gold, we wouldn't want to go there. Because we think we've shifted out our values from persons to things. A treasure chest of diamonds is not the greatest treasure on earth, my friends. The greatest treasure for us is a close, heart-to-heart relationship that we build. That is heaven. So when two people have a close, nice, good relationship, there's heaven on earth. And when a human and God have this relationship, it is heaven. Now, I'm not saying there's no place like heaven. There possibly be a place like heaven. Yeah, that's what he has said. But what makes it heaven is not the gold. What makes it heaven is the presence of somebody who's so desirable that you want to live with that person. And so heaven is a place where God lives. And if it's between God and God, because the Christians do have God as a triune God, a Trinity God, then when the relationship is between God and God, it is even more blissful than heaven. Because the heaven came from them. So what they have is even better than heaven. How about hell? Most people describe hell as a place where the fire burns. And yes, it does. I don't know. That's the description. But I also know one more thing. That fire can burn your skin. But a broken relationship will go to your heart. Hell finally is a broken relationship. And when two people break their relationship, it's hell on earth. And when it's a permanent break between a human and God, that's hell. And something has to happen, so I guess there's fire. But fire is secondary. Primarily is the broken relationship. And if ever there's a broken relationship between any two members of the Godhead, it will be worse than hell. So heaven, a place of God's immediate presence, and hell is a God-forsaken, God-abandoned place. Yeah, there may be fire, but fire is not the key. Death. The Bible describes two types of death. One type, it's called sleep. It's temporary. It's a consequence of the principle of sin that was brought into the human race. When it came, well, the people will live only this much time and die. But you will be resurrected again. So this one type of death, sleep, is called sleep because it is not permanent. It is temporary. And it's a consequence. Whereas the other type, type 2, is a permanent death. It is not a consequence. It's a punishment. The punishment when you have been told and you steadfastly refuse and constantly refuse until the point where you have made an absolute permanent decision. And nobody can say who has made that permanent decision. So don't look around to see who is going to, who here is in that category. No, we don't do that at all. But we do describe that there is something known as a permanent death from which there is no resurrection. Then Hebrews, the book of Hebrews in the New Testament, describes what is called the suffering of death or taste death. How can you suffer when you're dead? You can't taste anything when you're dead. So the suffering and tasting has to occur when the person is alive. Think. In other words, when you're alive, you're facing it. You suffer death not when you die, but before you die. It's the sense of impending just eternal doom. This is finished. It's over. And there's no hope whatsoever. That burning sensation deep inside is called the suffering of death. It is called the tasting of death. Then we also mentioned one thing day before yesterday, broken-hearted. Remember? Some of you who were there. When there is severe and deep sorrow, grief, stress, if it's really deep, it can cause the heart muscle to rupture and cause instant death. That's where we got our expression, broken-hearted individual. When they found lovers forced to separate and one of them suddenly dies with no reason, when they do a post-mortem, they find that the heart muscle has ruptured. Because the pressure of the stress, the grief, unbearable grief. So with these words, we're going to the story. Let's take a stretch out and take a deep breath. All right. We picked this story up on a Thursday night. Thursdays were not known in those days as Thursdays. I'm just using it as our Thursday. On a Thursday night, it's close to what is called a Jewish Passover. Jesus is with his disciples, and today he is unusually quiet. And they have the Passover meal, and then he says, let's go to the place where we usually go to relax, to the Garden of Gethsemane. And he takes them slowly along the path. It's a full moon night. All Passovers are on full moon. So he went to the Garden of Gethsemane. And at the gate, he looks at his disciples and he says, the 9 of you, he had 12, the 9 of you, please wait here. And the 3 of you, you come with me, we're going to go in. And then after a few yards into the garden, he turns to the 3 and he says, you also wait. What I have to do alone. And he takes a few more steps, and he went a little farther and fell on the ground. The disciples had noticed that it was different that evening. He seemed to be under a burden. He was not walking with his firm steps like before. He was staggering as if under a burden. And that's why he went a little further, just kind of earshot, fell on the ground, and prayed if it were possible the hour might pass from him. And he said, and these are the words that are written in the record, Abba. Abba is a very endearing word. The Jews had the formal word for God, Father, as Abhinu. Like we would say, Father, here. But Abba is like saying Dad, Papa. A very intimate. Abba, Father, all things are possible for you. Take this cup away from me. I do not want to take it. Do not let me go through this experience. I do not want it. It is simply too painful. I thought he was a great guy. I thought he could look at the people and just snap his finger and create miracles. He could look at the most crafty Pharisee and he couldn't twist his words. Nah, he could catch them. He would make the demons beg at his feet. He would go on a boat, and when the storm rose, he would tell the storm to keep quiet. He could look at a dead body, and he could tell that dead body, I am telling you to please rise up. And the body would rise up from death. And this man is saying, I don't want this, it's too... What's happening here? Running away, lost courage, lost faith, everything? What's happening? Compare this story with the story of Jerome. Now, Jerome was burnt at the stake. He was a Bohemian reformer who was burned at the stake. Now, when you are burnt at the stake, you are tied to the stake, and then you put wood all around you, and then the person with the fire would come and light it behind. That's how they died. But when this guy with the fire came to light the fire behind Jerome, this is what he said. Come, light the fire before my face. If I was afraid, I wouldn't have been here at all. And what about the maidens and the children in the Colosseums of first century Rome? They would be tossed into the Colosseum. They would be thrown there for the wild animals to come and eat them up, just tear them to bits. And what would they do? They would form a circle and hold hands, and they would sing. Facing death, they would sing, unto him who saved us and washed us in his blood, all glory, all power, all majesty to him. Why was Jesus not brave like this? Why was he not singing? Why running away? Nearly everyone points the descriptions of the physical suffering and claims that that is the crux of the story. But if that were the case, then we would have to confess that Pilate, The Roman soldiers and the Jewish priests, along with Satan, cooperated with God to get our salvation. But only God was working out our salvation. Satan and his cohorts were certainly not. He doesn't care about your salvation and mine. So these things happen at the same time, but they are worlds apart. The cross, the nails, the thorns, the spear did not buy anybody's salvation. So now what bought then? What is the thing that bought our salvation? For this, we got to go back a little bit to some of the words that are written in the record. It says in Revelation 13 and verse 8 of the Bible, the last book in the Bible, that Jesus has been described there as a lamb slain way back from the foundations of the world. Now, if something happened way back then there was a process that was starting way back then. And when you look at it carefully, most scholars say the relationship between God and humans, they describe it in two what's called covenants or contracts. Contract 1, contract 2. Old Testament has contract 1, New Testament has contract 2. And these are contracts or covenants between God and humans. But way back then, there was no humans. And I believe there was a contract. But it was not between God and humans. It was between the God's members of the Godhead. They got into a contract and said, we will take the full responsibility for creating humans. See, I didn't choose to be born. Neither did you. So if there's a God who gave us our lives, then he actually has the responsibility for whatever happens to me. The fact is, when they held hands and they took that oath, the three members of the Godhead, they took the responsibility. If anything untoward happens, we will pay the price to bring them back or redeem them at any cost to ourselves, because they would take the responsibility. That is called what I call the primary covenant. That is actually what saves us. But we've got to see how it was done. In that covenant, among them, one of them had to become a human. Jesus said he would, because he was the one who was the actual agent who created this world and you and me and our forefathers. So he said, okay, because the untoward bad thing happened. Adam and Eve gave the whole human race to the opposite side, to the side of darkness. So the untoward thing happened. Now when it happened, now would be their word. If anything happens, we will pay the price and bring them back. And the price, one of the things would be that one of them would step down from being God of the universe, and become a human. But there's a trick. Would he really become human? If he did not become truly human, then his incarnation would be a sham. You're pretending to be a human, but you're not really human. And if he really did become truly human and live on the morality and the piety of humans like you and me, or even like Adam was, failure